What up, everybody in the outside world? Welcome back to the Expression of Love podcast, and welcome back to Become Your Own Breakthrough. I had to do a little extra praying today. Prayer was a little long. I just did the same 10 seconds that I always do for y'all, but today's prayer was a little long. Now, I'm okay, by the way. Just something happened, today made me a little angry at myself. Basically, sometimes your phone does those random updates and then certain notifications will either turn back on or stop showing up. Well, I missed an important email until today, and it resulted in an interview needing to be rescheduled or whatever. I'm venting, aren't I? I am. I think I'm gonna leave this in. Anyway, sorry to bore you to death with my troubles. I am doing fine. I just had to pray a little extra and thank God for all the blessings. One of those blessings is this book. It's called Black Rednecks and White Liberals, written by none other than Thomas Sowell. Can you see that? Now you can. Oh, that's what I'm trying to avoid, making it disappear. And this book is a game changer. It's definitely worth the buy. I got the hardcover. Is it called a soft cover? The paperback costs significantly less than the hardcover, but I definitely suggest that you get it and read it. And as you can see, I have all types of sticky notes and things. I'm not even done the first chapter, and I got 7 sticky notes in here already with different things highlighted. And reading the book, I'm starting to come to a conclusion. I'm starting to formulate some theories of my own, because I often find myself in conversation with people who, disagree with just the fact that I'm a Black conservative at all, or disagree with some of the things that I say about critical race theory and how it's not healthy to be so race obsessed, and that it's actually not a solution, or not the solution that a lot of people think it is, to meet past discrimination and past racism with present discrimination and present racism. That being racist towards white people today is not going to change the past or mend the wound of white people being racist towards Black and brown people years ago. And in those conversations, there's plenty of room for, I don't know the answer to that exact thing, but I'll, look for it. And one of the things I didn't really have an answer for, or a theory, I still don't have an answer, but one of the things that I didn't really even, have half an answer for is how the destruction and violence and hyper promiscuity, hypersexuality, and all of that, how all of that became hallmarks of Black inner city culture. There was a time in the 90s and early 2000s where you couldn't go 5 or 6 hip hop songs without some sort of reference to, if you stepped on my shoes, then it was either time to fight or you were going to get shot. That type of prideful but not really about anything, just pride for pride's sake, pride because I'm alive and I should be prideful. That sort of pride and the violence, that ensues when somebody oversteps a boundary, looks at you wrong, again, steps on your shoe, chooses not to do business with you, whatever. I'm actually accidentally skipping ahead in my video here, but basically I didn't have an answer or even half an answer or a theory as to how these things became hallmarks of inner city Black America. But with the help of Thomas Sowell and his book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals, I'm starting to formulate my own theory and come to some conclusions about this. So first, I want to say thank you to Thomas Sowell. I want to say thank you also to Candace Owens, who I believe was the first person that I heard on a YouTube video mention Thomas Sowell's name. And I immediately started looking into him. And, well, let's dive in, shall we? Maybe the reason most Blacks in American inner cities are so far behind in schooling, so far gone in crime, and so far removed from enterprise, among other issues, is not simply due to racism. Perhaps a disconnection from the cultures their ancestors developed plays a major role. But even that cultural disconnection may be secondary to something less publicized and less well known, which is the cultural connection to a destructive way of life that filled the vacuum created by the disconnect. The cultural differences between inner city Black neighborhoods and affluent white neighborhoods are huge. That's obvious. But what's not so obvious is these very same differences are eerily similar to the differences between northern white cities and southern white cities in America in the 1700s and 1800s. For example, it's revealed in a book written by Thomas Sowell, Black Rednecks and White Liberals, that as late as 1850, 15 years before the Emancipation Proclamation and 15th Amendment and all that, 13th Amendment, 15 years before that, in the 1850s census, over 20% of Southern whites were still illiterate, compared to less than 1% of whites living in New England. Other characterizations made of Southern whites during the same era and earlier is that they were poor, unwilling to work, adverse to academic achievement, hypersexual, loved Jesus, and were violent beyond belief. One of the gruesome examples of this violence among the Southern whites is the description of an activity called rough and tumble. Basically, if for any reason you felt like fighting someone, you would confront them and agree to either a fair fight or a rough and tumble, the latter almost always being chosen. And the results from these fights, these rough and tumble fights, a daily occurrence in the antebellum South, was often gouged out eyes, broken bones, and missing teeth. What is also interesting is the reason why these fights were started in the first place was often due to one's pride. You could look at someone the wrong way. You could make the wrong remark. You could choose not to do business with them or any other slight or offense that may touch their pride, and that may result in them resorting to this barbaric violence in return. Similar to how you may be shot for wearing the wrong color, stepping on someone's shoe by mistake, or winning a game of cards in the hood today. This poor white Southern culture, called redneck culture, is what surrounded Blacks in the antebellum South during and post-slavery. And in the United States as a whole, although it is tragic that 1/3 of whites come from this culture, it is completely staggering that 9/10 of Blacks come from it. Remember, most whites in the South were too poor to own slaves, much less large pieces of land. The culture that was brought here from the Scottish Highlands, the Celtic Fringe, and the northwestern Britain, in the 17th and 18th centuries was a mirror image of the cultures in today's inner crime-ridden cities. And this is not to say that there have been absolutely no changes through the centuries, but to ignore all the similarities between these cultures would be a disservice to us all. And I think it's important to know just how deep this goes. I mean, even the laziness and the normalization of contempt for working both stem from this culture. For instance, there were hardly any bridges in the South. Thomas Jefferson crossed 8 rivers between Monticello and Washington, 5 of which had no bridges or boats. A passage from the book reads, commenting on how lazy the Southerners were, one man noted that no Northern farmer would neglect to build a bridge over a stream that crossed his property. Indeed, 2 live Yankees would complete the work in a single day. But the Southern planter would ford the creek lying between his house and stable a whole lifetime. The same complaint was made about the Highland Scots, whose roads were equally bad as those of Ireland and the Old South. So Black people in the South, which was where the majority of Blacks lived in early America, obviously, were surrounded by this culture for centuries, on top of the fact that they were disallowed to keep African language and custom alive in this era. While we could stop here and blame those 2 things alone, there's one more missing piece that is extremely important when discussing this matter in regard to the perpetuation and continuation of this culture in our neighborhoods, which is this: government assistance programs that incentivize dependence. One thing we know is that there are more white people on welfare programs than Black people. So there is no reason to believe that all those in government who favor these programs are solely targeting Blacks out of racism alone. But there is a possibility that a large portion of the support for these so-called progressive programs comes from the need to preserve that very culture that impedes on both whites and Blacks' achievement and socioeconomic potential. Maybe some are fighting to keep alive the antiquated redneck culture of the Celtic Fringe and Scottish Highlands for as long as possible through Black America. Maybe they feel that without the continuation of this culture and what it brings, they would have less power and influence over the American people, and more importantly, over the American dollar. All we know for sure is that when you are given what you need, you lack something essential: the drive to earn it yourself. Because nothing can push you to create comfort for yourself outside of the pain of discomfort. Dennis Prager once said, "The trick in life is not to have your happiness be dependent on your contentment." You can be happy and not content. In fact, the more time you spend in total contentment, the less happy you become, because happiness is inseparable from purpose, which is inseparable from meaning. Purpose gives your life meaning, and meaning gives you happiness. And although liberal thought and policy often is filled with good intent, it robs people of purpose in so many ways. Now, for the next portion of this video, I'm going to react to a conversation between Thomas Sowell himself and a liberal woman who I don't know on the subject of welfare. Let's take a listen.
What the welfare system and other kinds of governmental programs are doing is paying people to fail. Insofar as they fail, they receive the money. Insofar as they succeed, even to a moderate extent, the money is taken away. This is even extended into the school systems, where they will give money to schools with low scores. Insofar as the school improves its education, the money is taken away, so that you are subsidizing people to fail in their own private lives and become more dependent upon the handouts.
And you can see immediately in these first comments. Now, I don't know if this is where the conversation started, but you can see immediately in his first comments how poisonous that kind of setup is and system is. And really, you can almost see, in my opinion, I can almost see, I'll just say, the intentionality behind setting it up like that. Because in order to be taken care of, in order to be put back in the womb and back in your infancy where everything is done for you, you have to not succeed. You have to fail or just basically continue without achieving. And that is, I mean, I don't know if everyone out here has experienced being on welfare programs themselves, or as a single mother, but this is how it works. As soon as you start earning, let's say you're given $1,000 a month, and just for easy math, $1,000 a month from the government, as long as you remain where you are financially. But as time passes and things get more and more expensive, and inflation, as well as other things, impact your ability to live off of this $1,000 a month, the $1,000 a month doesn't necessarily increase, at least not at the same time. And so you decide, okay, well, I'm going to get me a little, part-time that can help subsidize, the amount of groceries or gas that I need for my car. And let's say now you're making $1,600 a month, right? Let's say this part-time is really, really, really part-time, and that's that's all the time that you have, as well as that's what you could find that's local and convenient for you. And now you're making $1,500, $1,000 or $1,600 a month. Then the government says, oh no, well, actually, now that you've changed your income, we're going to take this $1,000 away because you're able to provide for yourself now. Well, what are you left with? Now you're left with $600 a month, and the $1,000 a month was not sufficient. So what does it encourage? It encourages you not to achieve. It's whether you are sitting here watching this and you're like, oh, well, I would just have the forward thinking and the intelligence to know that if I just, keep trying and achieve more, then I'll be earning more. And so I'll be able to take care of, whatever the government takes away. That mental fortitude is not so easy to come by when you're in a situation, and especially when you weren't expecting that to happen. And in terms of studying the law and studying reading every page of the policy and all of that, that is not what most people on welfare programs are doing. They know that if they apply, they probably will qualify for this much or this amount of food stamps or whatever a month, and they know that if they make too much money, that will be taken away, even if they don't make enough to fully subsidize whatever is lacking in it. That will be taken away from them. Let's continue.
We have expectations built in today about the quality of life, the quality of job, the level of income for which one expects in return Why? Because we look at the level around us that it takes us to have
No,
a
that's not
fairly
why.
decent level.
No, that's not why. I may have all sorts of expectations. The question is, what can I do? If someone else is subsidizing my expectations will be far higher. Insofar as the Center for Advanced Study was subsidizing my expectations a few years ago, I refused to work at UCLA for the normal full professor's salary. Why should I when I can get the same money for being at the Center for Advanced Study with no hours, no duties, and no classes?
Cut off welfare tomorrow. What will they do? What will be their immediate response? At what price to their small children and to their middle-aged children? Yes, they'll get a job. In fact, the statistics show that women, in fact, are the most successful through the employment program. But what has to supplement that typically is the provision of some kind of daycare arrangement. Either the individual woman has to earn enough money to be able to pay privately for her daycare, or in fact she is, quote, subsidized through this insidious corrupting set of programs run by the federal government, which in fact makes her employable and a taxpayer. It's an interesting notion of trying to get people in a productive mode.
Can you smell that? Smells like bullshit. What do I mean? I mean, yes, what she's saying is intelligible, it's understandable, but the way it's framed is, and what Thomas Sowell points out here in just a moment, is she's isolating the incident as if the only factors that are at play are the mother, the child, the daycare, and the money, right? The money that's either being provided by the job or by the welfare program. And that is how the policy legislators and the politicians that are out and speaking with the public, that's how they fool you into believing that this is a program put in place to help you get out of poverty, when in fact it's not. Because again, she doesn't address and you know, I don't know if this is, you know, how much they cut out of this conversation, but anyway, she doesn't address what was just said about the fact that you're encouraged via the money will be taken away from achieving anything for yourself, from making any, you know, money of your own, and basically the way the policies are written is that as soon as you cross this level of income, that's the month that it gets taken away. So you don't get an adjustment period, you don't get, or even, you know, let me not generalize because I haven't looked at all of the bills, but that's what I've seen and heard about from economists so far in my standing. But even if there's a slight adjustment period, the encouragement is still there to stay within a certain income bracket. And that wasn't addressed by her at all. The only thing she said is, oh, well, what's the cost? You know, what about the child that won't have daycare and the mother that, you know, wants to go working? What's the cost if we take away welfare? It's the smell of the BS is all in the air, extremely strong with that kind of basically spinning the story or framing your argument. It's not addressing the problem at all, and it is pretending that improving the welfare system isn't an option, right? Why skip straight to, well, what happens if we take welfare away tomorrow? It's like, well, it can be reproved, it can be reformed, right? You don't have to just snatch it away blindly. It can be paired with required learning before accepting it, so that you know exactly what you're getting into. You know, it can be there. A million things can be done besides just poof away welfare systems tomorrow morning. But let's continue, because I love what Thomas Sowell says here.
so.
It's incredible the way you start the story in the middle, as if there's a predestined amount of poverty, a predestined amount of unemployment, and that the welfare system is not itself in any way responsible for that.
There is a predestined 20% of the bottom half of the population.
I have never, well, that's always been true. And
There's going to be 20% at the
statistician would
bottom.
agree with you. It's also true that 20% of the bottom population doesn't have to be living on the government and ruled by the government. You mentioned, for example, the female-headed household. Many of those, in addition to the grown woman who has all the kids, are teenage pregnancies. There's not a predestined amount of teenage pregnancy. I grew up in an era when people, and particularly blacks, were a lot poorer than today, faced a lot more discrimination than today, and in which the teenage pregnancy rate was a lot lower than today. I don't believe there is a predestined amount of teenage pregnancy, a predestined amount of husband desertion. Gutman has done a study of the black family showing that this whole notion that the black family has always been disintegrating, that is nonsense, that his studies go up to 1925, the great bulk of black families were intact, two-parent families up through 1925, and going all the way back through the era of slavery. So it is now only within our own time that we suddenly see this inevitable tragedy which the welfare system says it's going to rush in to solve, but which it is itself a part.
We're talking about a very small group. We're talking about 12% of the families are not intact, are not two-parent families at any one period of time.
I mean among welfare recipients?
No,
or the
among the
population at large?
public at large. We're talking about 12% of the families. 12%.
That's right.
That's a small number. But
Well,
there's
none of
still
those on welfare.
We're still talking about a significant component of the bottom 20% that are the bottom 20%. Whether they are above the poverty line or below the poverty line, they are still the bottom 20%. And the issue is, what is the responsibility of the other 80%, if any, toward those individuals?
Does your program plan to eliminate there being a bottom 20%?
No, but it intends to raise the bottom 20%. So
You're raising them by having more illegitimacy, more unemployment. That's
I'm
how
not
you're
making them
raising
have illegitimate children. I hope that's clear.
Oh, I think. Oh, you don't have to do that. You simply subsidize it.
And there you have it. No, our programs are not designed, or we do not have the intention of eliminating the bottom 20%, meaning raising that bottom 20% to above the poverty line or above the 20 percentile mark, uplifting them from the level of poverty that they are in. No, that's not what our programs are designed to do, and that's not what it's for. No matter what kind of pseudo logic you can apply to the imaginary need for these programs, it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. A lot of the words and concepts flew by a little fast toward the end of this conversation because they kind of bounced back and forth a little bit, but I encourage you to watch it a couple times. And if you're unfamiliar with a certain term, just do a quick Google search or search on DuckDuckGo, because that's better than Google and you should use DuckDuckGo instead of Google. But do a quick search to familiarize yourself with the term and think about this. Think about this in regards to the whole video, where we have this culture that we need to really re-examine, and we need to uplift, basically transcend, right? Not do away with and scoff at, but we need to transcend a lot of the hallmarks of inner city Black culture as it stands today, right? I don't think anybody would argue with me about that. And we need to know that, there's this whole phenomenon of when you're young and in school and you're speaking proper English and you're interested in things that you've learned in science experiments and mathematical equations and historically significant scholars, that you're told you're acting white. If you're a Black person, especially if you're a biracial person, meaning a white parent and a Black parent, and you're interested in these things, they tell you you're acting white, right? Or even just speaking proper English at all, or having different interests in what you're entertained by, can get you your, what they say, your Black card revoked. So we have this type of culture, which is really a mirror image of the redneck culture that surrounded Africans and African Americans during the era of slavery, which is centuries long, and then was migrated up north during the Great Migration from the South to the North, and the Industrial Revolution and all of that. And on top of this culture, we've developed these attitudes that are against achievement and that love the idea of being taken care of by the government, which keeps us impoverished and keeps us in situations where when we want to achieve, not only are we not accepted by the larger Black community, sort of your peer group, but you're also discouraged from achievement. If you're on welfare, or if your parents are on welfare, they are discouraged from moving to a higher income bracket. So, just put all of that into perspective, think about it, take a moment to re-examine what you have going on and what your current worldview is. And lastly, I want you to know that you can change this. Whether you are somebody who is an ally that wants to help this, conglomerate of problems, and add solutions to this conglomerate of problems that we're facing in the Black community, or you are facing these issues yourself and you happen across this video, you can do anything you set your mind to. You can mobilize people in your community if you have the courage to meet them, learn what they're about, and commune with them and share your ideas. You can go out into the world and search for things. Sometimes it requires you leaving your home with, not much to your name. I wouldn't encourage you to just start walking with absolutely no plan, of course, but you are not bound. You are in the land of opportunity, and you are a child of God. I don't mean to dismiss your personal beliefs, just sharing mine. You are a child of God, meaning you are created in the image of the infinite. You do not have the limitations that you think you do. You have the capacity to learn. You have the capacity to change. And you have the capacity to shape your own destiny in many regards. So I want to impart to you the fact that no matter where you are, no matter what you want to do, and no matter how many times you failed, you are worth the investment. And so is your community, so is your family, so are your children. You are worth the investment of time, of money, of sort of blood, sweat, and tears. You are worth the investment. The only mission we need accomplished in this cultural war is to tell the truth and to get every man, woman, and child to do the same. It is time to take your life back and become your own breakthrough. Once again, my name is Soul Expression. Thank you so very much for listening in, taking your time to watch this video and rock out with me. Check out more videos in this very playlist. Like and subscribe if you have not already had the chance. Comment below if you would like to support anything that I said, if you would like to argue against anything that I said, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.
Expressions of